Now I'm making sauerkraut. And sauerkraut is the quintessential fermented food. The origins of sauerkraut, and again, you know, we don't really know because so many fermented foods are discovered by accident. But legend has it that during the building of the Great Wall of China, the laborers who built the Great Wall of China lived on a diet of salted cabbage and brown rice, plain brown rice. And they were very, very healthy workers. And when the Mongols overran China, they were so impressed with this salted cabbage that they took it and they made their own variations of it. And in their conquests throughout Europe, they made it to Hungary, and then the Hungarians picked up the sauerkraut, and then it went to Germany, and that's actually where the name sauerkraut comes from. So the word sauerkraut actually means fermented greens. When Christopher Columbus and other explorers were coming to the Americas and making all sorts of discoveries, it was very common for sailors in those days to die from a condition called scurvy, or otherwise known as scorbutus. And it was a disease of basically a vitamin C deficiency. And there was one explorer, Captain Cook, who, smart man that he was, packed barrels of salted cabbage onto his ships. And throughout all of his voyages, he did not lose a single sailor to scurvy. There are variations of sauerkraut really all over the world. I mean, the Koreans, you might be familiar with kimchi, which is a very spicy pickled cabbage that's made with daikon radish and sugar and chili peppers and ginger and garlic and kimchi. It's one of those things, again, that you either sort of love or hate. If you've had Latin American food in some parts of southern Latin America, they have a similar cabbage dish called cortillo. Oh, the French, of course, choucroute. So who could forget, as Julia Child would say, who could forget the choucroute? So this sauerkraut that I made was cabbage, and then I'm going to cut up this horrendously homely, ugly little thing, which is actually a celery root. This is, yeah, see, it smells like celery. Really wonderful, really grassy. It's the root of a variation of celery. This isn't the celery that we're used to. This I am going to take the peel off because there's just too many crevices where the dirt can get in, and, you know, we just don't want to be, like, gritting our teeth while we're eating the sauerkraut. But celery root has been making a comeback in the, how should we say, the high-end gourmet world. It was a very, very popular vegetable in this country back in the colonial days in the 18th and 19th century. I think there's stories of like maybe Thomas Jefferson ate it, I don't know. But it was, you know, a very common vegetable, and then it kind of disappeared for a while. And now it's reclaiming its place in the pantheon of wonderful tasting vegetables. I'm just cutting this celery root into batons, basically. And I'm just going to go ahead and throw those in. So I'm chopping up some garlic here. I'm just going to go ahead and chop that into all sorts of coarse little pieces. There we go. So I've got cabbage, celery root, and garlic. So far, I'm going to let go of the rest of that celery root for now. And then I'm going to cut up this carrot similar to the way I did the celery root. I'm just going to go ahead and make some batons. And I'm putting some carrot in here primarily for a little bit of color contrast and also for a little bit of sweetness. So what I'm doing here is I'm just slicing the carrot very fine on the bias, like so. I'm just going to let that go for now. And then I take these very thin diagonal slices and just cut them again into sort of Asian-style matchsticks. It's one of my favorite knife cuts. This is just a random combination of things. Like one day I was going to the farm and these were the things that I found, and I decided to make a sauerkraut from them. People have made sauerkrauts that have you know, beets and jalapeno peppers and daikon radish and turnips. I mean, just about any kind of root and ground growing vegetable can be used. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to add some aromatics here. I've got some dried dill, which just, you know, dried dill really called to me just because of the cabbage and the carrots and the celery root. It just seems like a natural sort of Eastern European type of flavor. I've got some juniper berries that I'm just going to throw in there, just very sparsely, and a little bit of celery seed. And I'm not measuring. I mean, you can just do this to taste, basically. It's, like I said, it's really, really hard to screw this up. So I've got some celery seed and then salt. And the way that I salt is I just start on one end and I just carpet from one side to the other. And my old cooking teacher, Anne Marie Colvin, used to say, use your hands when you're measuring salt because your hands will always know how much salt to put in. Okay, so now comes the making of the sauerkraut. So with all those seasonings, I am now really getting to massage the carrots and the cabbage. I get to use some serious upper body muscles here. And what I'm doing here when I'm massaging is and massaging it with the salt in particular, is that I am breaking the cell walls of the vegetables. I am forcing them to rupture. And in that process, they will release some of their beneficial enzymes that will contribute to and hasten the fermentation process. Another good reason to put seasonings in like juniper berries and celery seed and dill is that all of those seasonings are very, very powerful mold inhibitors. Now, mold can be one of the things that can go wrong with sauerkraut. It's one of those things where people freak out because they open up their sauerkraut and they say, there's something, you know, gray and foamy on the top of it. There's no need to worry about it. First of all, adding spices like this can help inhibit that. But then if it gets moldy, just take the mold off. It's only a top layer phenomenon. Everything underneath it will be fine. What's really important with making sauerkraut is that the process of fermentation becomes anaerobic. We want to eliminate its exposure to oxygen. And I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. So I can sit here and massage this forever. But what I like to do, because I'm very lazy, is I massage it for just a little bit, and then I walk away from it. And I kind of let the salt do a little bit of the work for me. And then it'll wilt a little bit more just on its own. And then I come back and I help it along, and then I let it go, et cetera, et cetera. So I think for right now, what I'm going to do is let it go and just let it do a little of its work while I clean up the rest of the kitchen. And I think you can see, if you look, that it's already starting to break and wilt down and so on. So I'm going to just let this go for a moment and I will be back. So what we're looking for here is that puddle of liquid. I don't know if you can see that, but we've got like just a little bit of liquid here. We just want to massage until that starts to break through. And then what we're going to do from here is we're going to take all of this and we're going to pack it into a jar and press it down and get even some more liquid out of it. So again, if you just have like a ball jar, you know, something very simple, we're going to pack it in. And I am using a little gadget, a little tool, which is a big pestle. And I'm just going to put this in here. And I'm pressing down. Now you can, if you have a wide enough jar, you can use your bare hand, you can just use your fist. You know, whatever works. But the idea here, again, we want an anaerobic condition with the sauerkraut. So we are just going to press it down. And we're going to force the liquid up like so. Just keep pressing it down, and you'll be amazed at how much we can actually pack in. In fact, Even though this seems like a lot, this might not even fill the whole jar. Let's just see. Okay, ready? Here we go. It takes a lot of upper body strength. Forget about going to the gym. Forget about doing all those chaturangas. Forget about it. Just make sauerkraut. You'll get plenty strong and benefit your digestion too. Before you start making, any fermented foods, you really want to make sure like your hands are clean. It's okay to handle things with your bare hands, but just make sure your hands are clean. Make sure your jars are clean and all your utensils and stuff like that, because we don't want the beneficial flora to have to fight anything that could be pathogenic in here. And we definitely don't want any mold developing. So, all right, we're giving it one more push. There we go. Beautiful. Oh yeah, look at that. See, that's really great. You see all that liquid just coming up to the top there? All right, great. Now, the trick with sauerkraut is keeping it submerged so that, again, it's an anaerobic environment, so it's not exposed to oxygen. So I am actually going to cheat here, and what I'm going to do, just one moment, I am going to add a little bit of water to the top, like so. And with that, I'll put in a tiny little bit of salt, just a little pinch, and we're going to seal it up. I'm going to put a nice tight fitting lid on it. Okay, and then let it sit out. Now, sauerkraut, how long do you let the sauerkraut sit? That is entirely up to you. You can, again, as with the other ferments, you can taste it as you like. You could taste this after 3 days, and if you like it, move it to the refrigerator. You can taste it after a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 6 months. I've had sauerkraut that, I've had 2-year sauerkraut. As it sits and as it ages, it's like wine basically, which is another fermented food. It's going to build character and it's going to build complexity as it goes along. So here is this sauerkraut, and it's interesting because what do I have here? I have this little pop-up button, which will be interesting because as this sits, it will build lactic acid, it will build carbonation again. And it's entirely possible that I could, in another week or 2 weeks, I come to check on this and open it up and it could all over the place. So it's very, very excitable. But in the meantime, here is the same recipe of sauerkraut that I made. This is a month-old jar of sauerkraut. I made basically the same thing about a month earlier. And I mean, you can see the color got a little bit darker, obviously. And, it's a different condiment. And I'm going to just give this a taste. And you can see some of my juniper berries in here. Oh, yeah. Wow. It's very crunchy. It's extremely sour, which means that it's very fermented. It's kind of like, wow, It's very tangy. If you don't like the color of it, I can give you a little culinary rule of thumb, which is when in doubt, just sprinkle some minced parsley on it. You can put some minced parsley, some minced chives, a little fresh green something. That will just help it look a little bit more revived. But yeah, this is good. It's quite tasty. Okay, so I think that's the sauerkraut demo for now. And go ahead and make some sauerkraut and just let me know how it goes. I really want to hear how it works for you. So definitely keep in touch. Thank you.